Former U.S. Attorney for Utah. He's with the Tolman Group, founder, and former federal prosecutor, but a good former federal prosecutor. Brett Tolman, thanks for coming back. My specific first question to you is, the Espionage Act hasn't been applied against a former president who's taking classified information. We don't even know if all of them have, since now. The law was first put in place in 1917. Doesn't it seem to you like this Jack Smith just dusted it off looking for a way to try and get Trump, or am I missing something?
No, I really like the way you described that. Mark, think about the fact that when Reagan was in office, there were a few thousand criminal statutes, federal criminal statutes. There's now over 300,000 federal criminal statutes and regulations with criminal penalties. So I've said for years, if we don't hold DOJ accountable, we don't rein in their power, then they have the absolute ability to maneuver around, pick and choose statutes that they want to apply. And if they want to, they can make that office, a political weapon against those they don't like. I've watched it increase in frequency, and now you're seeing the absolute pinnacle of using your office to go after someone that you don't like rather than someone that's committed a crime. And the Espionage Act, I would just add, there is no reasonable prosecutor who's fairly looking at the law who would utilize the Espionage Act against a former president who had classified documents in their possession.
And there's no reasonable attorney general who would approve it, because I worked for one, Ed Meese. And if I'd gone into his office and said, Jimmy Carter has a document, Mr. President, we can use Section 793E, the unwillful retention of documents. It's pretty much a strict liability part of the statute. Let's search his. He'd say, why don't you get the hell out of my office? Take a nap, maybe have a lunch, something or other. We don't do that. We don't create this kind of drama in a nation like this with bureaucrat investigators, bureaucrat prosecutors, and so forth and so on. So I lay this responsibility, Brett Tolman, at Attorney General Merrick Garland. This case could not be criminalized without the approval of the White House, and it was by the White House counsel's office. So when Joe Biden says, I'm not involved, I'm not taking any attention or paying any attention, that is utterly and completely dishonest. This thing ultimately was unleashed by the White House, was it not?
You're 100% right. I've heard, the White House attempt to distance themselves, but let's look at it realistically. And I love that you brought up Attorney General Ed Meese. He's one of the things I remember about him is he would call prosecutors up and congratulate them when they declined a case for exercising their discretion properly. We're long ways away from that sort of administration of justice. So here you have a petty, little vindictive man in Attorney General Garland. And I say little because he is assessing something and he is bringing it to a level that is utilizing his power in an unjust way. And the White House has to be on board. There are liaisons between the president and the attorney general. They communicate daily. There is no chance in hell that this president didn't give the green light to Attorney General Merrick Garland.
And you're exactly right. And he can fake it all he wants. He is a serial liar, and he's been a serial liar since before he went to law school. And he continues to be, as far as I'm concerned. But this Merrick Garland was involved in the inside job with the National School Board Association against the parents. So he's diabolical. And he's been involved in holding back the marshals from protecting the justices when people were violating federal statute and trying to harass them and intimidate them. He's brought political cases against Republican state legislatures with whom he has policy disagreements on abortion or voting or something of that sort. And yet he doesn't pull the trigger when it comes to enforcing the immigration laws and so forth. I would say he's the biggest political hack in modern times to be attorney general, and he's angry that he's not on the Supreme Court. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that vindictiveness that is coming out against Republicans, against political opponents of the Democrats is, I think, a direct result of him being so upset about not getting on the Supreme Court. And for me, I look at this and I think about Jack Smith and him being, sent out like a missile against their largest political opponent. And I think about the fact that so many people think there's some seriousness to this charge, and the indictment reads that that these are very enlarged violations of the law. I could take and put in front of the grand jury all the people that transferred and moved Joe Biden's classified documents. I could put his son in front of the grand jury. I could put his lawyers, like Jack Smith did, and violate attorney-client privilege confidentiality. And I could put together a conspiracy case, an obstruction of justice case, and an espionage case. But I wouldn't do it, even in that instance, because it is not the proper use of the criminal law. Take back those documents and warn them and let them go. But now they've changed the game. Now they're charging a political opponent who has stronger defenses than Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, or any of those who they have given a pass to over the past decade. So it's outrageous to those of us who served in the Department of Justice. We're upset. We see our Department of Justice being grinded into the ground and politicized and weaponized against one political party.
And the only way to stop it, and I don't mean to be provocative, is to use it against them. Then they'll understand, and they'll back off,
right.
And then they'll sue for some kind of an accommodation. We'll be right back.